Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you to the witnesses for being here today. And as we talk about the government's role to improve affordable housing and the options and affirmatively further fair housing, I want to look back on some firsthand experience I had growing up. My family, in today's standards, had we grown up today, we would have been considered vulnerable or at risk because my family struggled to make ends meet. And I know it's not easy for kids to move around a lot. It happened to me probably by the time I was 14. I had probably moved a dozen times. So I do understand the challenges facing families and children. I certainly don't understand as an adult, thankfully, but as a kid, I understood that. I can't imagine how my parents felt having to struggle to provide housing for us. So, Mr. Hendricks, I guess I just want to ask a couple of questions because our experiences I have were with affordable housing and so forth. But you may be aware of or familiar with certain proposals such as the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act, which would use grant programs to upgrade housing units into carbon neutral communities. Can you speak to the impact this $180 billion effort would have on creation of new affordable housing options and our overall economy?
Thank you, Congressman Keller. The Green New Deal would, as you said, commit $180 billion over 10 years to upgrading the federally administered public housing units. That is to say, it would not necessarily create more housing units, but it would upgrade them. But I don't believe many have questioned how we would spend $172,000 per unit to upgrade these units, or let alone in New York City for NYCHA units, spend $230,000 per unit, or question where we would house individuals when we moved them out of public housing units. According to the plan for New York, we would move people into newly constructed public housing towers and warehouse people there for up to a decade with necessarily no promise of return. Meanwhile, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit to I guess, provide employment. That is one of the biggest selling points for the Green New Deal, is to provide employment for construction and labor unions. I think our biggest focus should be on housing for more people that is more affordable. That does not do that.
Okay, thank you. And alternatively, the Trump administration's proposed rule on affordable housing aims to reduce burdens for local communities and hold underperforming ones accountable as they address this issue. From your perspective, how might this policy affect children and families?
Well, as my fellow witness stated earlier, for the Fair Housing Act and AFFH in specific, we've never affirmatively enforced it. No community has lost funding for excluding individuals for exclusive regulations that have often grounds in racism. We've generally affirmatively failed in providing fair housing. And so I think that we have tremendous opportunity this time to hold communities to account, but to also make sure that it's communities that are reforming and it is not HUD bureaucrats making the choices for localities. I trust those in your communities in Pennsylvania more than I do those here in D.C.
Thank you. And I guess to make a point, I know there's opportunity zones across the nation where investment is being made into communities that need that investment. So I think that would also, wouldn't you say that would also be a benefit to attract affordable housing and let the municipalities or the local governments sort of decide how to best do the affordable housing?
That's right. The Opportunity Zones has in its name opportunity, and we need to provide that opportunity for children, for families, for people of all backgrounds, but especially those who have been historically disenfranchised. And if you look at the Opportunity Zone program, it is based on communities working with their states to identify areas of opportunity in low-income census tracts and surrounding neighborhoods. And continuing to invest in more housing in those areas is something that the Opportunity Zones enable. And together with this new AFFH rule, we can prioritize that sort of investment for more communities.
I appreciate that, and I just appreciate all the opportunity that all Americans are enjoying in this great economy that we've begun to realize over the past few years. Thank you, and I yield back. Oh, excuse me, if I have one thing. I do have some documents, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, to be entered into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.